Thank you, David Fernando Bachrach, PhD candidate from Colorado
Boulder.
Yeah. University Colorado Boulder. Thank you for coming to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And welcome in Indonesia. How long have you been here?
About 15 months.
15 months.
Yeah.
So you speak Bahasa.
Bisa.
Good. Excellent. David, can you share with us your journey in academia and what inspired you to pursue a PhD in human geography at University Colorado Boulder?
Yeah. So originally in undergrad, I had not intended to pursue, well, it wasn't necessarily a conscious choice, but I wasn't sure if I would pursue academia. And then I took a human geography class my senior year of college. Loved it. I was an international studies student in undergrad, and it really changed my perspective on things and realized it was something I was passionate about. So that year I applied to graduate school and was accepted and attended the geography program as a master's student at the University of Oregon. And then my advisor recommended looking at the program at UC Boulder, potentially working with my current advisor, Timothy Oakes. And it was a great fit. The department and also Colorado has beautiful mountains, so it was an easy sell to go live there and work there and move there with my wife. Yeah.
But David, you mentioned that your bachelor degree in International Studies, and your master's degree in Oregon, and your PhD in Colorado Boulder.
Yeah.
So if you look in the map, it's actually a bit far from one point to another point. Your bachelor degree in
Washington, D.C.
DC, that's will be in the West Coast? East Coast?
Yeah.
And then you go to the Oregon?
Yeah.
And the Colorado, that will be...
Oregon's like
Midwest or to the east?
So Oregon's like West Coast, and then Colorado is the West.
The West.
Middle West.
Middle West.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a geographic lesson.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. David, you were awarded the FLAS Summer Fellowship to attend Intensive Indonesian Language Studies at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. And how did this experience support your research, your current research?
Yeah, it was essential for my research. My university, Colorado Boulder, offers Indonesian classes. So I was able to study Indonesian for about a year and a half or so before I came to Indonesia. But my Indonesian, I'm very much a language learner that needs to live in the environment to grow as a language learner. And so being able to just do a summer intensive program where I went to class every day for like 8 a.m. to 3 in the afternoon, thereabouts, Monday through Friday for about 2 months straight was a great opportunity. The teachers were great. So yeah, it was really nice.
So summer program is 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah, it was the end of May until middle of July, something like that.
May and July, 2 months.
Yeah, because I arrived for my field work last January, got settled, spent some time getting my kitas, all that sort of good stuff, and then I went to Bandung and then started the program at the end of May.
Yep. Excellent. So your research focus on the Jakarta Bandung high speed train. What motivates you to take this subject?
Yeah, so originally my background is in China studies. So when I began my PhD, my advisor had already begun to work more in the field of global China. So looking at Chinese overseas development projects and using that as a way to understand kind of what's happening within China and outside, understanding the relationship there, as well as what's happening for local communities that kind of experience these projects. So then I started looking at projects, and the high-speed train, it looked like it would be finished. So it's not required for my dissertation that the project would actually finish, but I had hoped that I would be able to study a completed project. And then also my department, my university at the time, had about like 3 professors there that all worked in Indonesian studies. I was able to talk to them, learn about their experience doing research in Indonesia, and it was all very positive. Then they shared great literature for me on Indonesian infrastructure studies and also like urban studies in Indonesia, which is kind of my one of my specializations within geography. And so it was kind of a perfect combination of my intellectual interests and then also the practical kind of matter of the project will be done. I'll be able to go research it, and it's also a Chinese, partly Chinese project.
So you mentioned in Colorado Boulder there are some professor doing Indonesian studies.
Yeah.
I know Colorado Boulder, I think well known for in Indonesia for economics, if I'm not mistaken, the Indonesian economics. But you mentioned Indonesian studies, meaning they have a department of Indonesian studies?
Sorry, not Department of Indonesian Studies. One is in anthropology and one is in sociology.
Okay.
That are still there, and one of them is kind of on my PhD committee, and so able to give good advice.
I just want to know. I attend your presentation. You mentioned also about global China and Indonesian studies. Your framework is doing the global China and Indonesian studies and the interplay between these two. So Indonesian studies considered as a studies a discipline. So global China, it's also a studies.
Yeah, it's like a sub area of research within China studies.
So within China studies.
Yeah.
So this is China studies and Indonesian studies.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned also a lot of discussion on elaborate on your specific methodology on doing this. What do you call multi-scalar approach? Please explain what's that.
So kind of connecting the international, national, regional, and local scales. So understanding the connections between something like the agreement between Indonesia and China to undertake the high-speed train, and then the planning for the project, the decisions that were made, and then how is that being experienced by local communities, and then vice versa, how they shape each other. So looking at how the conditions in local communities kind of then shape the almost higher level scales, the larger scales like regional urbanization or national level politics.
So you start from here, you try to understand, first stay in understanding this, and then bringing into higher level to understand what happened in the regional and...
Yeah, just understanding how they influence each other. Kind of not that any of them can be understood in isolation. They kind of all have to be understood relationally.
Okay, so it's not isolated into only one particular discipline. Okay.
Yeah, like one level of analysis. Yeah.
So what you think will be your contribution, research contribution, or understanding the high-speed rail project for both Indonesian and China?
I think what I contribute perhaps the most is, how these mega infrastructure projects are experienced by local communities, how they have different impacts depending on local histories, local political economic structures, and the importance of paying attention to those dynamics when analyzing the kind of benefits and costs of a infrastructure project like the high-speed train.
So you mentioned it's how the local community experience this. In your research, the local community, it's Bandung people. Close to the train station, is it?
Yeah, people living in proximity to the train station and the railway tracks.
Yep.
Most of my research is done in Bandung Regency and West Bandung Regency. Just for me, looking at the areas that are most impacted directly by the construction and implementation of the high-speed train.
Okay, so what are the key challenge that when you're doing this research?
Yeah.
You interviewing people and how you try to cope with this problem, with these challenges?
I think the aspect of research I was most nervous about perhaps when I was beginning was what would it be like to arrive in these spaces and places and communities and introduce myself and get to know people and develop a relationship with participants and just people in the community, because I just wasn't sure how people would respond to me. But people were extremely warm and welcoming to me, and so that was it made it easy for me. I was nervous, but in reality it was a challenge in the sense that it was something I had to do initially, build those relationships, but it was easy in the sense that people in these communities were very curious about me, kind of what was this American researcher doing here, walking through the kampong and talking to people, and it was a really great experience.
So please share an experience when you walk into the kampung in Bandung, Kabupaten Bandung.
Oh, Berat and Kabupaten Bandung.
Yeah. So I know if you live in Kota Bandung, it's more dense. If you're talking about the Kabupaten Bandung, probably less people live there, right?
Yeah, it's more of a rural area. Yeah.
So it's more friendlier than. You live in Bandung Kota or in Bandung?
Bandung Kota. So I travel between the different areas.
So how you compare Bandung Kota and the Bandung Rural?
There are similarities, like there's many kampongs within Bandung city, but like you said, they're more densely populated. I think, for example, you see a lot more reliance on farming in the Bandung Regency. There's more of a rural livelihood structure in terms of the jobs that are available to people. But I think one of the things that has been a really nice thing to experience in Indonesia is just how nice people are to me as an outsider. And whether it's in the city or in the rural spaces or communities, or also peri-urban as well, I think people will just ask me like, hey, what are you doing, where are you going, and just making some chit chat, and then over time they see me a lot, and then they kind of want to talk more, and it's been very nice.
I live in Bandung for quite sometimes years, and if consider Bandung it's very dense and a lot of people high educated, so they can speak English. But if you live in the rural area, probably they do not quite good in English and less foreign people there. But that's why, do you find that the similarity of people responding to you as a researcher or as a scholar?
Yeah, I do think perhaps there might be, depending on who you talk to, it's going to change from person to person. There might be a little bit more. It might take a little bit more time in areas that don't have many foreigners coming around for me to kind of gain the trust or relationship with people, just because I'm just kind of this outsider. But in terms of kind of language and communication, but again, that's person to person in terms of some people I meet for the first time and they just want to chat and talk for a long time. It just depends on the person. But in terms of language, even at the local level, people might prefer Sudanese over Indonesian. And I do not speak Sudanese.
Yeah.
I know very little. Kind of the basics like Hatur Nuhun, Sami Sami. And my research assistant is Sudanese and can speak Sudanese. So that's been essential in this research, is the help of my research assistant over the past year, in terms of if I don't understand something in Indonesian, because my Indonesian is not perfect yet, or especially if people prefer to use Sudanese.
So you mentioned that you have a research assistant. So do you have some collaboration with ITB or Institut Teknologi Bandung or UNPAD, or you mentioned it, University of Gadjah Mada?
Yep.
With who and how they enhance your research product or your research result?
Yeah, it's been, so when I came to Indonesia in January of last year, it was my first time coming to Indonesia, and I had experience living in China and kind of traveling by myself, so I knew I could handle that part, but whenever you go to any new country, there's a lot to learn. So having those relationships at first were extremely helpful to get settled and feel like I had a network of people I could reach out to if I needed any help or anything. My research assistant is not actually affiliated with, he's not a student at either ITB or UGM where I have affiliations. I met him through a friend. But at UGM, I have Pak Pujo Semedi is my research counterpart, and the department at UGM, the Fakultas Ilmu Budaya.
Oh, Fakultas Ilmu Budaya.
Yeah, super welcoming and helpful and supportive in navigating all the different aspects of doing research in Indonesia. So whether it's the applying for the permit from BRIN to the KITAS to so on, to supporting me once I'm in country. And then ITB, I had a relationship with as well in terms of an affiliation, but I don't have a research counterpart, though I've gotten close to professors there over time, and so now I hope to have more collaborative relationships.
Which department in ITB?
SAPPK.
Oh, SAPPK.
Yeah.
Sekolah Arsitek dan Pengembangan Wilayah. Perencanaan dan Pembangunan.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've said the whole acronym.
Yeah. SAPPK. Yeah. So, as a Fulbright, you are Fulbright grantee, you are Fulbright awardee, Fulbright scholar, living in Bandung. And what academic or cultural insight that you gain during your stay there?
I think one of the, two perhaps dynamics of Indonesian culture that I've learned more of is one, I think in my experience, people are really willing to help people they don't know, talk to people they don't know. And I think that aspect of going out of your way to help people is a really nice thing to know that you can rely on that if you live in Indonesia. Also kind of the close relationships people have with their family and friends, especially in the kampung or what have you, how close people kind of orient their time around. As someone who's moved around a lot and has not always lived super close to their parents, it's just a very different perception of that relationship, and that's quite nice to experience in Indonesia. And then in terms of kind of the other cultural dynamic is santai, kind of be a little bit more chill about things.
More easy about life.
I don't need to always be in a rush, what is it, jam karet?
Jam karet,
Jam karet, the kind of rubber time. So I think those things kind of culturally at least, and then academically, just building collaborative relationships with people has been super rewarding. Like this event today at BRIN, an event I have tomorrow at ITB, this workshop I'll do with Pak Pujo, hopefully, if we get the interest in July at UGM. So just having these relationships that I hope will just grow over time has been really great.
So you mentioned that you have some people there, you know about the jam karet, but the academic peer, academic community that you interact very regularly, do you have this type of connection? Because as a Fulbright scholar in Bandung, there must be a lot of Fulbright scholar, past Fulbright scholar or present Fulbright scholar.
Yeah, currently I'm the only Fulbrighter in Bandung. So actually a lot of people are in other islands outside of Java, for example, or other parts of Java. But I do know in the past, people have come through SAPPK as Fulbrighters, just not currently.
Previously I was teaching at ITB.
Oh, you were?
And I hosted 2 professors.
Really?
And professor.
Oh, okay.
Professor from Randolph College, Texas University graduate professor. I think it's already retired.
Oh, okay.
And one others, maybe Illinois University. But
Illinois, okay.
That's 10 years ago probably.
Gotcha.
2009, 2000.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, there must be a lot of Fulbrighter from United States to Indonesia, and also Fulbrighter from Indonesia go to United States. That normally, I think it's ITB is one of the highest number in terms of Fulbright awardee.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense in the kind of events that ITB puts on and the opportunities to meet professors and other graduate students, especially other people interested in infrastructure and development. It's been phenomenal to have that opportunity.
Yeah. In what way do you think that the Jakarta Bandung high-speed railway project will impact local community, and what are the main factor influencing that impact? That's also I see in your presentation.
Yeah, so I think the impacts of the railway are very much dependent on the ability of people to take advantage of the changing opportunities. So, just based on interviews and kind of observations, you can see that most of the riders would be middle upper class people using the train that are moving between Jakarta and Bandung, like tourists or business people. And then the businesses that are developing these kind of direct connections perhaps are kind of larger scale businesses like IKEA, right? But in terms of like the local communities within that, then there are people benefiting. It just kind of depends. Are they able to access the job opportunities at the station? Because those do exist. Do they have the money to invest in opening up a warung or a kos-kosan to provide a new source of income for themselves? So it really depends on the person and having the money to take advantage, in that case, of like opening up a warung or business, or kind of able to get a job at the station, which would require kind of meeting certain educational requirements, which in the communities I've done research in is not always the case. That a lot of people, especially older people, have only graduated perhaps from SMP or SMA rather than
high school
or SD and SMP.
Yeah.
But haven't graduated from SMA, which is the requirement that I've been told to work at the station.
So in terms of the development of the infrastructures, the local community that you study is the local community there that want to work in the train station or in the railway. Then that you think the education is not good enough,
or there's a barrier there because I think there's still quite a lot of people that haven't necessarily met the requirement of graduating from SMA.
But in one of your presentation, you mentioned that there is no transfer of knowledge. There is no, this type of bringing technology from China to Indonesia and supposed to be a project assembly. That in your second research question?
Oh, so actually, I think there are attempts to transfer knowledge.
Yep.
I forget the exact timeline, but there are plans in place to eventually have local kind of Indonesians, right, take over the more specialized jobs in the railway. And then in terms of like knowing certain technical, some more like advanced railway technology through the high-speed rail train coming to Indonesia and being constructed here, I do think there has been some transfer of knowledge as well. More that, at least in the areas that I'm doing research in, the jobs that are more available to everyone are not the like technical jobs. They're more like cleaning service or kind of parking service or those types of jobs.
By saying that do you think that you have a negative tone on the impact of building high-speed train because it's low, let's say blue collar job, than doing the engineering stuff of the
I guess more like trying to get at your question about kind of transfer of knowledge and kind of what jobs are being made available. For me, it's a matter of kind of on a case-by-case basis, like looking at the different villages and dynamics that are at play to understand who exactly in these communities are benefiting and who are perhaps not benefiting. Because in every community there's going to be people that do benefit, and then there's going to be some people that don't necessarily benefit, so it's really a case-by-case basis of studying at the local level.
What type of people do you think benefit most from this developing infrastructures, the high-speed train?
Well, I think the users are, from what I can tell, predominantly middle, upper class users. And
not tourists, eh?
well, tourists too that can afford to use the like go from Jakarta to Bandung for like a day trip or something. I think those businesses and developments that are able to generate these kind of close relationships with the railway company, but also at the local level too. And by local, I mean the people and communities that are been most directly impacted by the construction of these projects. If they have the money to invest and open up a warung or a kos-kosan, then, or if they have like strategically located homes and whatnot, then there are opportunities to kind of get some of the benefits there. But then there are people, of course, that either are not able to open up those businesses or access the jobs available at the station. So yeah, just it's a complex picture.
Okay, so for some who benefit most, someone who has money that they can make a warung, kos-kosan. But how about in my opinion, I have a lot of friends who actually commute. So it become a commuter because it takes only 1 hour from here to Bandung. Instead, they stay in Jakarta, or instead in Bandung, they can stay in their own house, but they work in Jakarta, or people in Jakarta but work in Bandung, which is very normal in Europe, I think, in Holland or in other places. But I know probably it's not very common in United States. What is your intake or your response
about commuters?
Yeah, because that will be the growing number. I know it was not discussed probably in your research because this is just a beginning. You are making on the development.
Yeah.
But what is your prediction in the future?
Yeah.
Because it will influence if the government, the policy making will make a next step of high-speed train. Meaning, I know within 5 years probably Indonesia will extend the volume, or what's that? The length of the high-speed trains. What is your response?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least in the Jakarta Bandung corridor, most likely will just intensify urbanization and movement between the two cities, because you have more of these new town developments in Bandung, for example, that perhaps might cater to people that work in Jakarta but want to live in Bandung. Bandung's famous for its weather and food, and so people like to live there. So they might, we might see an increase in that. So I think you'll just see this intensification that other scholars, like scholars at SLPPK, have identified about the increasing urbanization and becoming this kind of mega urban region between Jakarta and Bandung. For me personally, I'm interested in looking at the long-term development of urbanization in Bandung myself, kind of how these areas, like in the regencies outside the city center, are being transformed. And then, who knows, maybe in 20, 30 years, Java becomes kind of this massive urban corridor between Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya, and so on. Where you could, easily travel to Surabaya in like 3 hours or something and spend a couple days and, still have a house in Bandung or something like that.
Because this is what make interesting on the growth, the urban growth. Previously, Jakarta is Jabodetabek, the Tangerang, Bekasi, but with this, so it can be Jabodetabek, Bandung maybe, because it only takes less than an hour to Bandung, and if it is Bandung will be also Greater Bandung, then what your prediction will more important. So looking ahead, what are your long-term goals for your research? And how do you hope your finding will influence the future of policy making in Indonesia?
So in terms of like long-term goals for my research, I would love to continue doing research in the communities I've done research in already. So just developing those relationships more. I'd like to kind of look at how Bandung is going to transform as an urban space over the next,
Wow.
10, 15 years. And my own hope is that there will be a high-speed rail station in Jogja, because I would love to do research in Jogja. I love Yogyakarta, so yeah.
Wow.
Kind of my long-term goals.
I think within 5 years they will have a high-speed train into that direction.
Yeah.
So your long-term goal, you interested more on research on Bandung urban area, and wow, and also so you become Indonesian studies, not the global China anymore.
I think Indonesian studies is a big part.
Yep.
I think always have a little kind of foot in global China and would like to do research and talk to those scholars and do research about Chinese development. So it's still very much, or me, I guess, as a researcher, very much Indonesian studies, but also still contributing, I hope, in some way to global China.
So this is my last question. So do you think the next high-speed train came from which country?
Oh, if I was to predict, I feel like probably China again.
Okay.
If I was to guess, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
David Fernando Bachrach from University Colorado Boulder, thank you very much for coming into our podcast, Pusat Riset Kewilayahan BRAIN. Thank you very much for your time.
Terima kasih banyak.